On a fateful Easter Sunday in 1937, a New York City dwelling was transformed into a horrifying crime scene. A day typically marked by happiness and festivities was tarnished by a gruesome discovery in an apartment on East 50th Street's 4th floor. The victims included Veronica Gedeon, a vivacious 20-year-old model, recognized for her unconventional lifestyle, her mother Mary, and a hearing-impaired bartender who rented a room in their flat. The savage nature of the crime was shocking, even to seasoned New York City detectives. Both Veronica and Mary Gedeon were strangled to death, their lives brutally extinguished, leaving behind a scene straight out of a nightmare. The bartender, a reserved individual, was discovered stabbed to death, another casualty of the same ferocious frenzy. Initial suspicion was directed at Veronica due to her controversial lifestyle and perplexing relationships that left detectives with a labyrinth of leads. Her little book, teeming with contacts and names, suggested an unrestrained life, pushing the police to interrogate the various individuals she had encountered. Despite the suspicions, Veronica, lively and unbound, was a casualty, not the criminal. As mounting evidence, an odd glove, a bloody fingerprint, strange soap carvings started to accumulate, investigators were left grappling with more mysteries than they had solutions for. Veronica's father, Joseph Gedeon, was also scrutinized by the police, but the evidence against him was merely conjectural. But as the investigation intensified, the true monstrosity of the crime began to emerge. The event, later labeled by the media as the Easter Sunday slaughter, was the onset of a saga that would grip public attention, a morbid tale of fixation, brutality, and the deepest recesses of the human mind. The actual murderer was yet to be apprehended, and the chase was far from over. When the inquiry took a surprising twist, an ill-matching glove, a blood-stained fingerprint, and intricate soap sculptures shifted the focus of suspicion. Initially, the accusing finger pointed at Joseph Gedeon, Veronica's progenitor. The horrifying spectacle of massacre in his very residence, his offspring and a lodger brutally slain, his spouse strangled, was sufficient to raise suspicion. However, after digging deeper into the enigma, they encountered a set of oddities, an unfit glove to start with. Such a mundane object, yet in this scenario, it carried an extraordinary significance. This lone piece of evidence, deserted at the location, silently testified and subtly directed the investigators away from Joseph Gedeon. And then, there were the soap sculptures. What could be more commonplace than soap? Yet these weren't your average creations. Their distinctive pattern and the craftsmanship indicated an artisan's touch, and Joseph Gedeon was far from being one. However, the storyline thickened when the sleuths shifted their gaze onto the victim herself. Veronica, also known as Ronnie, led a lifestyle that was, to put it mildly, non-conforming for that era. She was unrestrained, disorderly, and embraced a contentious way of life that was a stark deviation from the late 30s norm. The unearthing of her journal and a little black book packed with countless acquaintances provided the law enforcement with a fresh aspect to each name as a possible clue, each note a potential incitement. As detectives sifted through Ronnie's existence, the likelihood of Joseph Gedeon being the culprit began to wane. The proof against him was speculative at best. The ill-matching glove wasn't his size, the soap sculptures were beyond his capability, and the bloody fingerprint spotted at the scene, that didn't correspond either. In the of undeniable proof against Joseph Gedeon, the law enforcement officers found themselves back at the beginning. But the inquiry was far from concluded. The puzzle was just starting to unravel, and the actual perpetrator was still at large, ready to be unmasked. The crimson path of horror led to an unanticipated culprit, Robert Irwin, a craftsman consumed by a sinister fixation. Indeed, the true maestro of this macabre play was neither a reckless socialite nor a mourning parent, but an artisan, a sculptor to be more specific. Robert Irwin, a man who skillfully manipulated material to create beauty, was also the mastermind who transformed the existence of the Gedeon family into a grotesque portrait of terror. Irwin's relationship with the Gedeons was more than casual. He was passionately, almost dangerously, captivated by Veronica's elder sister Ethel. This infatuation was the kindling that fueled his homicidal fury. But why? Why would a man so deeply enamored with one sibling unleash such brutality on the other? His confession, when it emerged, unveiled a horrifying narrative. Irwin had arrived at the Gedeon residence hoping to encounter Ethel. Instead, he was met by Veronica, her mother, Mary, and an unsuspecting bystander. In an outburst of fury, he choked Veronica and Mary before turning his blade on the unfortunate lodger. His motives were not pleasure or profit. He killed out of frustration because his obsession, Ethel, had been absent. This obsession is inherent to his being as his sculpting prowess. His admission paved the way for a sentence that just short of a life term, 139 years behind bars. But his tale concludes there. Irwin was ultimately relocated to a state facility for mentally deranged criminals, where he spent his remaining years, far from the society he had once terrorized. Ultimately, Robert Irwin was more than just a craftsman. He was proof that even those who birth beauty can harbor a potential for unimaginable monstrosity. Beneath the veneer of an artist hid a ruthless murderer. The tremors of the heinous act resonated across the communal landscape, imprinting a macabre memory. The horrific specifics, the unforeseen character of the murderer, and the lives abruptly ended together left an indelible imprint on the shared consciousness. Following the incident, the media was aflame with the tale. The lurid aspects of the crime were primed for revisiting, with every news source vying for a share of the narrative. The murder held a prominent place across various media channels, each contributing its distinctive spin to the narrative. A Crime to Remember, a renowned program recognized for its thorough reenactments of notorious events, devoted an episode to the Easter Sunday Massacre. Their depiction of the crime scene, the inquiry, and the final reveal of the murderer offered audiences a bone-chillingly comprehensive account of the calamity. The Mad Sculptor, a novel by writer Harold Schechter, probed deeper Robert Irwin's psyche. The book explored his fixation on Veronica's elder sister, Ethel, and his descent into insanity that culminated in the killings. The title alluded to Irwin's career as an artist, lending an irony to the gruesome narrative. The Lineup, an online publication reputed for its true crime narratives, also spotlighted the case. Their report highlighted the initial doubts cast on Veronica due to her lifestyle, and how these doubts were eventually dismissed. The article underscored the perils of hasty assumptions, especially in high-stakes situations. The Easter Sunday Massacre was more than a crime story. It was a societal event with far-flung implications. It ignited discussions on mental health, media's role, and the pitfalls of stereotyping. It also stood as a glaring reminder of life's unpredictability and the potential malevolence lurking beneath the facade of normalcy. The Easter Sunday Massacre continues to cast a somber shadow as a stark reminder of the evil that can dwell in the most unsuspected places. It's a narrative that reverberates through the chronicles of true crime history, a chilling testimony to the intricacies of the human mind and the disastrous results of its breakdown. This macabre act continues to ripple through the passages of criminal history. In the vibrant epicenter of New York City, an idyllic Easter Sunday in 1937 was abruptly disrupted by a terrifying revelation. The savage killing of Veronica Gideon, her mother Mary, and a lodger in their residence signaled the onset of a horrifying narrative. Initial suspicion wrongly landed on Veronica due to her unconventional lifestyle and associations. Yet the genuine terror lurked unseen. Robert Irwin, an artisan with a perilous fixation on Veronica's elder sibling, Ethel. The case veered unexpectedly when an ill-fitting glove, a blood-stained fingerprint, and soap sculptures all ominously pointed towards Irwin. This case served as a stern warning of the labyrinthine nature of criminal inquiries. The early suspicion cast on Veronica, and subsequently her father, Joseph Gideon, underscored the dangers of precipitous conclusions. It stood as a testament to the necessity of exhaustive and impartial investigations, illuminating the complex tapestry of evidence that can unveil the true culprit. The Easter Sunday carnage was more than a horrifying crime. It was a turning point in the annals of criminal history. It emphasized the paramount role that psychological profiling plays in criminal inquiries, with Irwin's perilous fixation and deranged inclinations being instrumental in his identification as the murderer. This case acted as a spark for the progression of investigative methods, underscoring the importance of forensic proof and psychological examination. Furthermore, the case etched itself into society's conscience, serving as a bleak reminder of the potential evil concealed beneath an ordinary facade. It instigated a reassessment of societal standards and viewpoints, bringing to the forefront the perils of obsession and neglected mental health disorders. An eerie narrative of fixation and murder, the Easter Sunday carnage remains embedded in the realm of true crime. Palm Sunday, 1984, a day that should have resonated with tranquility and reverence, was instead marred by carnage and terror in Brooklyn, New York. In an alarming twist of fate, 10 unsuspecting lives were mercilessly extinguished. The victims encompassed 2 women, 2 adolescent females, and 6 innocent children, leaving an entire community frozen in shock and deep mourning. The culprit of this terrifying deed was Christopher Thomas. Engulfed by envy due to his wife's purported liaison with a narcotics trafficker, Thomas commenced a frenzy that would etch its mark in the chronicles of malevolence as the Palm Sunday Massacre. The monstrous callousness of the act, blended with the tender years of the majority of victims, sent tremors across the country that are still palpable to this day. However, in this narrative of dread, a beam of resilience managed to break through. An infant girl exhibiting astonishing endurance prevailed through the massacre. Amid the wreckage, a solitary symbol of hope was birthed, a surviving child. Christopher Thomas, a man pushed to the precipice by jealousy and substance misuse, became the agent of devastation. The story of Christopher Thomas is a chilling one, a man entangled in the throes of marital discord and substance addiction. His saga is a stark cautionary tale of how personal turmoil can guide one down a path of unimaginable terror and devastation. Thomas was not always the fiend we label him as today. Once a mere man, he found himself plunged into enviousness, a destructive emotion that gnawed away at his sanity. The supposed infidelity of his wife with a narcotics peddler was the spark that ignited the fuse. The flame of envy burned brighter and more intensely, amplified by the substance that held him captive: cocaine, a powerful and highly addictive stimulant. This narcotic, once a means of escape, metamorphosed into the trigger for his ruinous deeds. It warped his thoughts, obscured his judgment, and exacerbated his sentiments of betrayal and wrath. As his addiction spiraled out of control, so did his actions. It was on that ill-omened Palm Sunday of 1984 when Thomas's inner demons seized the reins. Propelled by a toxic amalgamation of jealousy and substance-induced fury, he set forth on a path of devastation that would be forever immortalized in history as the Palm Sunday Massacre. 10 innocent lives were snuffed out that day, a horrifying testament to the extent of his fury and despair. Delving deeper into his motivations, it becomes clear that Thomas's actions were not the result of a solitary moment of frenzy. Instead, they were the culmination of a succession of tragic events: a deteriorating marriage, an all-consuming envy, and an uncurbed addiction. Together, they painted a dark portrait of a man teetering on the brink, a man who felt he had nothing left to forfeit. However, as with every action, there are repercussions. While Thomas may have been acting under severe emotional disturbance, his deeds were inexcusable. His decision to snuff out innocent lives, guided by his personal demons, led to a conviction that would incarcerate him for looming decades. These deeds, stoked by his personal demons, led to a conviction that would incarcerate him for the foreseeable future. In the courtroom, the enormity of Thomas's transgression was exposed, leading to a penalty that mirrored the harshness of his actions. The horrific Palm Sunday Massacre of 1984, which decimated 10 innocent lives, was revisited in the deathly quiet of the courtroom. Christopher Thomas, the architect of the chaos, found himself at the epicenter of a trial that captivated the nation. The defense's strategy was contingent on a single, albeit contentious, point: Thomas's emotional instability. They contended that the man was not a ruthless murderer, but an individual pushed to his limits by a mix of jealousy, betrayal, and a crippling cocaine addiction. A man so distraught that he lost sight of the sanctity of life. So they appealed for mercy, for a verdict of manslaughter, not murder. The jury pondered, scrutinized the evidence, and took into account the defense's argument. It was an intimidating task, to put it mildly. Here was a man who had single-handedly annihilated 10 lives, including those of blameless children. Could such a heinous act be the byproduct of a disturbed mind, or was it a reflection of pure malevolence? Ultimately, the jury concurred with the defense. They found Thomas guilty of manslaughter, not murder. The judge, however, ensured that the seriousness of the crime did not get diminished in the verdict. He sentenced Thomas to a staggering 83 to 250 years in confinement, a penalty that seemed to pledge that Thomas would never again see the world beyond the prison confines. But as we are aware, the wheels of justice often spin in unpredictable directions. Despite the severe sentence, a legal technicality would eventually see Thomas walk free. In the bleak aftermath of the catastrophe, a ray of optimism illuminated through the enduring toddler girl. Amid the agonizing tableau of the Palm Sunday Massacre, in a Brooklyn residence lay a petite emblem of tenacity. This was Christina. A wee child was discovered drenched in blood but miraculously alive, the lone survivor of a massacre that ended so many lives. Christina's survival was not just a miracle, it was a testament to the human spirit's fervor to persevere, and her chronicle did not conclude there. As though steered by the threads of destiny,
Officer Joanne Jaffe was among the inaugural responders to arrive at the scene. Jaffe, profoundly moved by the toddler's ordeal, undertook the responsibility to nurture Christina. This bond, forged out of a ghastly incident, burgeoned into a lifelong connection. Jaffe, who later ascended to become the most senior-ranking uniformed female in the NYPD, adopted Christina, endowing her with a nurturing and consistent home. In the ensuing years, Christina's existence was a stark contrast to the crimson scene where she was found. Brought up by her adoptive mother, she was accorded the opportunity to lead a typical life, to develop and to flourish. The terrors of the past did not confine her. Instead, they integrated into her narrative, a narrative of survival, grit, and optimism. A progeny of a massacre, Christina's tale was not one of victimhood, but of survival and victory. Her existence served as a poignant reminder that even in the darkest of periods, there is always a ray of light. Her existence epitomized defiance, a refusal to be obliterated by the burdens of the past. Jaffe's resolution to adopt Christina, her dedication to furnishing the child with a nurturing domicile, was a formidable act of defiance against the mindless violence that had blighted the onset of Christina's existence. It was a proclamation, a declaration that affection and compassion could still prosper amidst wreckage. Christina's survival and subsequent existence stood as a testament to fortitude in the face of unspeakable terror. Her story, intertwined with that of Joanne Jaffe, is a beacon of optimism, a testament to the human capacity for tenacity and love. It is verification that even in the face of the most horrifying tragedies, life can discover a way to advance, to mend, and to mature. Over 3 decades later, the aftershocks of the Palm Sunday slaughter still reverberate. Its chilling echo from the past that perpetuates its influence on our present. Christopher Thomas, the malefactor behind this atrocious act, embraced liberation post-incarceration in 2018. After serving over 32 years, his freedom was not celebrated with loud accolades, but with a quiet, disconcerting murmur. A release enabled by good conduct and the dictate of state law, a system seemingly oblivious to the magnitude of his heinous acts. The collective response from the public was outrage, to put it mildly. A small segment believed that Thomas had served his time and earned a shot at redemption. The remainder, however, were shackled by indignation. The prospect of a man who had extinguished 10 innocent lives, strolling freely among them, was an acrid reality to digest. Amid this maelstrom, a new regulation was proposed. This law aimed to deny any possibility of conditional liberation for individuals convicted of first-degree manslaughter, an unequivocal reaction to the injustice of Thomas's premature emancipation. But the legacy of the Palm Sunday slaughter persists beyond legal discourses and public uproar. It's a spectral reminder of life's fragility and the capricious aspect of human behavior. It's a narrative that has shaped innumerable true crime stories, its echoes discernible in the subdued exchanges of podcast hosts and the solemn declarations of documentary narrators. Then there's Christina, the lone survivor, a pillar of resilience in the wake of tragedy. Nurtured by Officer Joanne Jaffe, Christina's existence epitomizes human resilience and the inexhaustible potency of love. Her narrative stands as a contrast to Thomas's, a potent reminder that even in the blackest of times, hope can rise. The Palm Sunday slaughter, a chilling crime engraved into the annals of history, serves as a stark reminder of the evil that can skulk in the human heart. But it also sheds light on the fortitude of the human spirit, the capacity for endurance, and the invincible power of hope in the face of unimaginable adversity.
Envision a serene Easter Sunday, a familiar festivity morphing into the most horrifying family slaughter for the annals of American crime. Our tale unfolds in the quaint town of Hamilton, Ohio, the setting of an event that forever tarnished its once peaceful reputation. The date was March 30th, 1975, a day that would forever be marred in the records of crime history. This day bore witness to the monstrous actions of a man named James Ruppert, who turned a cheerful family reunion into a bloody massacre. James Ruppert, a man who spent his life overshadowed by his successful elder brother, would step out of that shadow in the most dreadful way imaginable on this awful day. His victims were none other than his brother, sister-in-law, and their 8 innocent offspring. A family eradicated in a blink of an eye, their existence halted in a matter of minutes. Hamilton was a tranquil town, a place where neighbors greeted each other on first-name terms. The thought of such a heinous crime occurring was beyond belief. Yet, in the wake of this slaughter, The town was thrust into a realm of shock and terror. The peace of their everyday lives was shattered, replaced with a bone-chilling dread that lingered long after the last shot was fired. This was not a crime of passion, nor a random act of violence. This was a calculated act executed by a man burning with jealousy and resentment towards his own kin. A man who, cornered by his own insecurities, made the decision to extinguish the lives of those he held dearest. The massacre played out rapidly. Within a fleeting 5 minutes, 11 souls were snuffed out, leaving a ghostly silence in their wake. This silence resounded throughout the town, a chilling memento of the grim Easter Sunday that forever altered the countenance of Hamilton, Ohio. James Ruppert, a man whose tormented history and deep-seated bitterness set him on a bloody trajectory. Born in a challenging family setting, young James was well acquainted with trials and tribulations. His early years were blighted by adversity, sketching a somber image that would eventually mold his destiny. This was a period of suffering and chaos, a time when the seeds of bitterness were planted deep within his psyche. Ruppert's elder brother, the family's shining star, prosperous and revered, stood in stark contrast to him. This difference kindled a profound jealousy within him, an envy that would steadily grow and play a crucial role in the forthcoming events. As he grew older, Ruppert's mental health began its downward spiral. The weight of his past, the bitterness towards his sibling, and the constant internal conflict brewed a tempestuous concoction. His life was akin to a ticking time bomb, the timer counting down, on the verge of a catastrophic explosion. His personal life was not his only concern. His financial situation was also in dire straits, adding another layer of tension to his already beleaguered existence. Some conjecture that his monetary hardships might have added fuel to the terrifying incidents that were about to unravel. In hindsight, the warning signs seem apparent. The tormented upbringing, the enviousness, the deteriorating mental health. They all hinted at an impending disaster. But often it's only in the wreckage that we can piece together the puzzle and see the complete image. The tale of James Ruppert serves as a chilling reminder that our past has the power to sculpt our future, and that bitterness and anger can guide us down a gloomy path. It's a narrative of how a man's life spiraled into an unimaginable nightmare, forever inscribing his name into the chronicles of true crime. His existence was a lit fuse of resentment and rage, and on that ill-fated Easter Sunday, it detonated. Let's journey back to that grim Easter Sunday, the day when the scene of a family reunion was shattered by a hail of bullets. It was March 30th, 1975, a date forever imprinted in the history of Hamilton, Ohio. James U. Ruppert, a man burdened by a troubled upbringing and deep-seated resentment towards his successful older brother, let his deteriorating mental state take the wheel. Embarking on a horrifying 5-minute rampage, he terminated the lives of 11 family members, making this the most horrific family massacre in American history. The house at 635 Minor Avenue was the stage for this terrifying tragedy. The cheery, festive ambiance of an Easter reunion was transformed into a savage bloodbath, as Ruppert targeted his brother, sister-in-law, and 8 innocent nieces and nephews. The fuel? A lethal concoction of envy, bitterness, and perhaps a desperate need for financial relief. In the immediate wake, the shock and horror that held the town in its grip were palpable. A day of resurrection and optimism had been stained by a violent act of familial destruction. Ruppert, the engineer of this gruesome act, remained unyielding to authorities, accentuating the chilling nature of the crime. His refusal to cooperate or manifest remorse only augmented the chilling atmosphere surrounding this incident. The consequences of that ill-starred day were wide-ranging. The town of Hamilton was left in a state of shock. The family abode, once brimming with laughter and joy, now stood as a chilling monument to a day when love was supplanted by hate and life by death. In a heartbeat, the family residence at 635 Minor Avenue morphed into a macabre tableau. When the echoes of gunfire finally faded away, the gears of justice started grinding for James Ruppert. Diving into the labyrinth of intricate legal procedures following the Easter Sunday Massacre, one cannot overlook the palpable tensions suffusing the courtroom. The opening trial was characterized by a storm of juridical intricacies that eventually ushered in a mistrial. The defense sketched an image of Ruppert's stormy past and his crumbling mental health, whereas the prosecution spotlighted the heinous and premeditated nature of the crime. The public sat glued to their seats, engrossed by the unfolding courtroom drama, as the case ran into multiple trials and legal barriers. The subsequent trial, though, delivered a conclusive judgment. A meticulous probe into the evidence and witness accounts found Ruppert guilty on 2 counts of aggravated murder. albeit the court also recognized his unstable mental constitution, acquitting him on the grounds of insanity for the remaining 9 counts. His punishment mirrored the severity of his crime, 2 life sentences back to back. Nonetheless, Ruppert's sentencing did little to satisfy the public's hunger for justice. Numerous parole hearings were organized over the years, but Ruppert's appeal for freedom was persistently overruled. He spent his remaining years confined behind bars, a somber testament of the grimmest Easter Sunday in American chronicles. Justice may have been dispensed, but for the victims in the town of Hamilton, the wounds inflicted by that Easter Sunday massacre remain raw and unhealed. The narrative of the Easter Sunday Massacre doesn't conclude with Ruppert's conviction. The house at 635 Minor Avenue had one final, eerie tale to narrate. In the aftermath of the massacre, an uncanny shadow draped over the house. Murmurs of ghostly presences began to circulate as the dwelling became enveloped in a network of spine-tingling rumors and purported supernatural occurrences. Each family that was brave enough to set foot in the property found themselves consumed by an oppressive sense of dread that saturated every nook and cranny, a feeling so overpowering it forced them to flee. The resonating sounds of laughter morphed into unsettling murmurs, the once vibrant family home now an eerie theater of grotesqueries. In the quiet of the night, the families narrated tales of soft echoes of gunfire, the spine-chilling screams of the victims, and the malevolent laughter of the culprit. The ghastly images of the deceased appeared to be etched into every corner of the house, their ghostly presence a bone-chilling reminder of the terrifying events that occurred on that ill-fated Easter Sunday. The house at 635 Minor Avenue became an exit for these petrified families, each one leaving as hastily as they arrived, driven out by the ceaseless supernatural activity. However, with the exit of the last family, a disturbing silence enshrouded the house. The ghostly presence that had once stalked the corridors seemed to fade away, the spine-chilling echoes of the past dissipating into oblivion. Some suggest this signified an end, the spirits of the victims finally finding solace. But even in its quietude, the house stands as a bone-chilling monument to the malevolence that once dwelled within, a stark reminder of the devastating events that occurred on that ill-fated Easter Sunday in 1975. The events of that bloody Easter Sunday continue to haunt the walls of 635 Minor Avenue, a stark reminder of the malevolence that once dwelled there.